Toastmasters manuals. The one that most everyone uses, or the one that everyone's working on, is the Competent Communication Manual. And that's where Ray Stryler comes into play. Ray is giving Competent Communication speech number 7. There's 10 speeches. Does anybody know what happens when you get to 10? Anybody know what you become after you reach 10? Oh, what do you got?
You become a competent communicator.
Thank you. You become a competent communicator. Who are my competent communicators in the room? So we got a few. Very good. That's pretty impressive. So let me tell you about Ray. This is what Ray wants you to know about him. Ray joined this club after only looking at one club. Thank you, sir. He has given a speech every month since he joined and is now on project number 7. Now, Ray is retired from the Army Special Forces 30 years ago and is settled here in Carlsbad. He is President Emeritus of Apollo University and Union University of California. He would like for you to know that his biggest love and where he spends all of his time is with his 6 grandkids and 1 great-grandson. Speech number 7 is researching your topic, and Ray is going to demonstrate that he has actually done that. His speech tonight is decision-making, blink or think. Decision-making, blink or think. Please say hello and welcome Ray Stryler.
Can you make a decision in 2 seconds? Can you make a decision in a millisecond? This gentleman here, Malcolm Gladwell, says yes, you can do that. This whole book is about how you can do that. A wonderful book by a wonderful writer. What he concentrates on is that the unconscious has the ability to make a decision right now, assembling all the information in the brain at the present time. You can make a good gut feeling decision. In other words, at the blink of an eye. Therefore the name Blink in his book. He goes into excruciating detail, just like only Malcolm Gladwell would do. In his own inimitable way, he weaves all these patterns through on 6 different case studies. Goes on ad infinitum on each one. And he explains what happens in the brain in order to make a gut feeling kind of decision. He says that sometimes, almost 90% of the time, that is just as well as a well thought out decision. So I took that book and I compared it with this book, Think. Think is thinking about thinking. Michael Legal just did a wonderful job. Another wonderful book. I couldn't lay either one of them down. It just so happened that he had read Blink shortly after it came out, and he was going to write a book anyhow. And he was going to write about some of the problems that we're having today based on the fact that a lot of people in America make decisions on gut feelings. We buy cars, we get married, we have relationships based on that gut feeling. In other words, that blink of the eye decision making. This book is all about the bold, controversial analysis of problems today as relates to decision making. He goes into the unconscious, and he explains the unconscious represents about 90% of the network. He represents that the unconscious is open 24/7, always awake. But the conscious, on the other hand, is closed down when you're sleeping. It only represents 10% of the brain mass, but you have to use it in order to develop the front part of the brain and make a good decision. He explains all the kinds of different decisions you can make. So I'm going to tell you about 2 decisions that I had to make, one of which was a team decision. It seems as though I was sitting in the Command and General Staff College in 1973 on the 6th of October. That might ring a bell with some of you. That was actually into Ramadan, and it was the holiest day of the year for the Israelites, and that was Yom Kippur. Later, this was called the Yom Kippur War. The assistant commandant walked into the door and he grabbed up two of our allied officers, the Israeli and the Egyptian. And as he was walking them out the door, he was explaining to them that there was a war in their country and that their two ministers of defense, Moshe Dayan and Anwar Sadat, had invited him back to the war. It just so happens that the Egyptian made a penetration back across the Suez Canal into the Sinai Peninsula, about 10 kilometers, and it was a major war, worse than all of those that have preceded the Six-Day War, War of Independence, and all those other little flare-ups with Lebanon and so on, and Syria. So we, at the Commander General Staff College, we turned our decision-making hat on. We became decision makers. And we employed the Army method, the analysis of the situation, and then we got into the decision-making process. So we had to make a recommendation to Secretary of State Kissinger how to stop the war. And at this point in time, it was like on the 7th of October. The war lasted 20 days. So we put our thinking cap on. We used the typical Army method, the who, what, where, how, when, and why. Rudyard Kipling has used these. He calls them his 6 horsemen, his 6 friends in his poem. And we used those. And about 5 days later, every day, teamwork, decision-making, very deep in depth, like Michael de Gaulle says in his book, Think, we made a decision. We said, Mr. Kissinger, you need to, first of all, have a ceasefire with both elements. They did that on the 20th of October, 20 days into the war. Not like the Six-Day War, 20 days. They decided along the Suez Canal on the left to put up, well, ceasefire and put up a peacekeeping force in there from the United Nations. That's what Kissinger did in his shuttle diplomacy. We also recommended returning the prisoners. That's a no-brainer. Now I'm going to tell you about a decision that I made, and I'm going to ask you, fellow Toastmasters, what you would have decided in this situation. Now I know you made a lot of decisions just like I have. Some of them are good and some of them are bad. And we've learned from those. So this situation I'm going to present to you, I want you to think about it and put yourself in my shoes for a moment. I'm on the jungle floor, Vietnam, during the war, and I hear something up ahead of me and my head pops up and I look to see what it is. And what kind of decision do you think I made? A blink or a think?
Blink.
Mr. Toastmaster.